It gives me immense pleasure to be standing in front of you and to be sharing few thoughts. In fact, I am quite grateful to the Chief of Naval Staff for having highlighted so many very important issues, and to the Chairman DRDO also. I just want to highlight few of those issues which came up during the discussion. When the Chief of Naval Staff said about people policy and pole vaulting, I think that is where the essence lies in what we should be doing. When we look at AI, we look at robotics, we look at automation, we start looking at them as reasons for replacing people. That is not so. I think that is the most bankrupt way of intellectually looking at how to incorporate science and technology. Whenever we look at progression and we see that, okay, optimization of manpower is taking place, I think what needs to be done immediately is supplementing technology to enhance the capability. Performance enhancement has to be done. What are the military applications in specific? When we look at AI, robotics or automation, that is where again we have to start looking at those various applications for humanity. Do we look only at military? Rather, we should go beyond that and look at the security scenario. There will be certain applications which will be there for non-military issues, but they impact the security domain. What do I mean by that? You look at space. Today, Indian armed forces may not be so good in military applications or civil applications from space. There's a lot of ground to be covered. But that is where automation and robotics has a major role to play. When you come down to the Air Force or the near space, again, automation and robotics have a major role to play. The recent things which have been happening, whether it is in Ukraine, whether it is in Israel, whether it is just happened in Balochistan, you can see what I mean by that. When you come on to ground operations again, there are many countries which are having major demographic challenges. Look at China itself. China, because of its one-child policy, the lack of population, the lack of youth, and many strategic analysts said that there will be a tipping point when China will start going down in efficiency. On the contrary, they found ways to overcome those challenges by using automation and robotics. And that's exactly how we should also be looking at when you talk of people, as the CNS said, the lack of capability or the need for performance enhancement can be done through these two methodologies. When you go to surveillance of huge areas, you have a huge country, you have surveillance required along the coastline, you have along the difficult terrain on the northern borders, you have challenging terrain on the western borders, and you leave it on a manpower which you feel is doing a good job. I think that is where supplementing and complementing of the human effort would enhance the performance, and all these problems that we see of human trafficking, cattle trafficking, narcotics, all that can be controlled effectively, and by doing so, the internal problems also can be reduced to a large extent. So again, from military applications to non-military applications, everything is in order. Unless we look at it complementarity or comprehensively, we will not be able to do justice to the national requirements. On maritime front, especially in the underwater domain awareness, there is so much of dependence on the internet cables, there is so much of requirement of rare earth, rare materials which are down in the seabed, and as we go towards more of EV, we will require that at the fastest possible rate. There are seabed portions which have been allocated to India, but we have not been able to exploit or harness what has been allocated to us legally. I think that is one more front where not necessarily military, but the output of that will be extremely important for military. So while it may be handled by another ministry like the MOES, but the outcome of that will be for many other ministries. So here is a question where we have to ask ourselves that a particular session, should it be structured only for military applications or for whole of nation approach? I think whole of nation approach would be a better answer, and outcomes from these sessions should go beyond purely military applications. When we look at the ground element or the air element or space or maritime, there are two common things which are related to capability and capacity enhancement, and we have to see how we can bring in these two for training, education, and also for your logistics. Now in logistics, for example, there are too many wastages, there are too many slippages, there are accidents which take place. There is lack of audit of what is the vintage that is lying with you. A case in point, for example, you look at the kind of accidents which take place because of faulty ammunition, vintage ammunition, and we do not have the capability to visit or revisit huge stacks of ammunition which are lying with all three services. What is the kind of forensic capability that we have? What is the kind of handling capacity that we have? I think unless we start looking at these smaller points and leave the other issues of policy to people who really matter on that, looking at the ethics of it and other things, let others handle it. What you as users, what I as a user have to do is identify what are the problems which we are facing, because of which we are suffering tremendous amount of losses. Let's start small, let's start everywhere, let's look at multi-ministerial cooperation, let's look at civil-military fusion, let's look at cross-generation application of benefits which accrue out of robotics and automation. Along with that, automatically comes the AI big data analysis. Now data in particular, I have been saying on multiple platforms that data is something which we generate to huge content, huge, massive. But how do we use it? We are still amateur in using that content. And that's exactly where, unless we go in for robotics and automation, we will always be lacking. I'll give you a very small example because people understand use cases. Whatever space imagery comes down and it is stored in the central archival facility, as we keep moving ahead, the requirement of retrieval, the requirement of cataloging, the requirement of archiving has to be smart. And that has to keep pace with the requirements as required by the commanders in field or by the logisticians in the hinterland. Robotics and AI and automation, that is the only answer. Unless we move fast onto that, whether it is related to space imagery, satellite imagery, whether it is related to ammunition storage, whether it is related to understanding the life of your equipment. Robotics is the answer to understand the life of your barrels, life of your tank engines, life of your other vehicles' engines. Have we introduced that? No. Are we doing it fast enough? No. I think this is the time for all of you who are sitting in the audience to really take a call, just for a kind of a small bit of introspection. When we were trying to push in a robotic cleaning of the artillery barrels, somebody made a mention, no, we don't need this, we have enough manpower. I think that is retrograde thinking. Unless we go in for cleaning of the barrel as well as monitoring the life of that particular barrel, and these barrels are there in all three services. We have to go in, otherwise we will always reach a point at the critical moment when we will be over emphasizing or over reading the life of the barrel, and at the crucial moment there would be a failure. I just give you this as a small example. Another example, look at the last about 10 days, what's happening in the civil sector in the aviation. Your flights are delayed, the entire turmoil. In fact, I just went around and I saw people who are participating in this conference, they were changing in a hurry in the washroom. Why? Because everything has gone upset. Have we been able to bring in science and technology into our daily life? Yes, but that last P which the CNS said about pole vaulting, I think that is extremely important. If we are going to just go at a snail's pace as decided by your audit and account service, then I think we need to find a better robo for audit and account. Thank you, Jai Hind. Have a wonderful session.